There's an analogy that we know really well, and it's kid in a candy store. We hear that, oh, he's like a kid in a candy store. And when you hear that, you picture a kid who goes into a candy store for the first time maybe, and is just so excited and so owned, by all the candy there, and there's so much that he can have or she can have. Now imagine if that kid stayed in the candy store for a while. 20, 30, 40 years. And eventually, the kid forgot what was outside of the candy store. And somehow, probably emotionally, graduated past the idea that candy is exciting, but still keeps eating it because they don't know what's outside of the candy store. So they're just eating candy, but they also kind of hate that they are because they've grown up. That's us. A lot of us have grown past the addiction and stimulation of the craziness in the world. But we're still in it. And that's the recipe for unfulfillment, anxiety, depression, massive fear. Because eventually you go, I'm done with this world. I'm past it. But leaving it is scarier. Because you don't know what's past it. If the kid inside the candy store could see a clear exit to something that would expand the kid and have absolute certainty that they'd be totally fine, they'd leave in a heartbeat. But what we're capable of really experiencing and becoming, we can't see from inside the candy store. And the more you do the work, the more you just start leaving the candy store. And the more you see the world as being kids in a candy store. And instead of candy, it's politics, Facebook, Instagram, people's opinions of you, alcohol, approval, bad food, worry, judgment. It's all of that. But that's our candy store. And what if the candy store wasn't outside of you, but it was inside of you? What if you've created a candy store inside of your mind, and then you look for the parts of the world to match the candy store that you have inside? And the world just keeps throwing things to cater to your candy store because it doesn't know, and it doesn't want you to know, about your freedom from the candy store. Because eventually you can still revisit the candy store. I'm not saying we should leave the candy store completely. But if you go into a candy store as an adult, it's a very different experience. An adult in a candy store goes in, understands that they don't have to eat everything like a crazy person, can experience things but from an adult place. And for us to grow up on this planet, we have to leave the candy store. And we have to return to the candy store as an adult. So it doesn't own us. So that it's not defining us. And when I meditate a couple hours every morning, I catch the candy store But I start looking at it from an adult perspective, and it starts to fall apart. It doesn't own me anymore. And sometimes I'll feel this pain. I'll feel like this is going to take hours and hours and hours. And I sit there and I sit there. And then immediately, it's like a second later, it's like when you're a plane and it's going through the clouds and you think this is doomed and you think you're in a thunderstorm, and then it comes out and it's all light and you've never experienced this level of, you're looking down at the clouds and it's all perfect sun, beautiful. That's what happens to me. And then you start to see those clouds were just on the way here, but they don't define me. They can exist, but they look very different from the other side, from the sun side. You don't know that's on the other side, and that's why we're scared to meditate, because all we see is we're going into the clouds, but we don't understand that there's a sun side on the other side. And then you see you're more than the clouds, and you're more than the candy store. And the candy store is great to experience for the first time as an expansion. To a kid, for the very first time, they've never been there, and it's so exciting. This is here, this is here, this is here. But if they were there for 30 years, they'd get really depressed. Because their soul knows there's more than that candy store. But their brain doesn't. And they listen to the brain more than the soul. And our job to graduate is to listen to our soul and stay with it for a couple hours and sit there and meditate and hear your mind go, I better check Facebook, candy store. I wonder what that person's up to, candy store. I better change that one thing or they're not going to like me, candy store. I got to watch Good Morning America, candy store. I got to watch the news, candy store. You can still visit it, but don't let it own you and take you from your soul. You're more than the candy store.